What does factoring mean? To factor a polynomial means to separate it or divide it into parts. Now, depending on the situation, there are different techniques we use with factoring. So we're going to cover a couple today. The first one is the very first thing you should always check for, and that's called the greatest common factor, or the GCF. The GCF, greatest common factor, is actually the largest number that divides each coefficient or constant, but it is the smallest exponent of the variables in common. So even though the name is greatest common factor, when it comes to letters and exponents, you will use the smallest exponent that they have in common. Take, for example, this first one. I see I have 28x squared plus 21x. First off, consider the 28 and the 21. What is the largest number that will divide both of those? You're right, it's a 7. So I'll take out a 7. Then look at the x's. I have x squared and x. Now both those letters are the same. So if it's the same letter, that's good. You have a GCF. But you will go with the smaller amount, the smaller exponent. So I will go with this x1 in the back. Now the proper way to write this is to put 7x, which is the GCF, greatest common factor, out in front. Then I'm going to divide. So I will divide by 7x. Each term gets divided by 7x. So 28 divided by 7 is 4. And when you divide variables or letters, you basically are subtracting the exponents. So x2 minus x1 leaves x1. In this second term, 21 divided by 7 is 3, and x divided by x is 0, because like I said, you're subtracting exponents. 1 minus 1 is 0. This then is how I would write my final answer. The GCF is always written in front when you write your answer. Sometimes the GCF may be obvious. Look at this second example to our right, example B. Do you notice how x plus 17 are both in parentheses already? And they are identical. So the GCF is actually the x plus 17. Now the proper way to write that would be to put it in the front, x plus 17, and then following it, once you've taken that and put it in the front, you will just see what terms are left over. Well, that would be the x and the minus 10. So you would place them inside a second parentheses. And that would be the way to write the second answer. And this is how you do greatest common factor. Now, I said there are other techniques that are used at different times. Sometimes you will need to use factor by grouping method. Grouping method is always used when you have 4 terms in your polynomials. That's how you'll know when to use it. Basically, you can do it in 3 steps. The first step is you will draw a line in the center of the polynomial to separate it. The second step uses GCF. You will find the greatest common factor, GCF, of the front or first half and the back or second half of the polynomial. Then you will factor out the common binomial. Now let me show you how this is done. I will take example A and draw a line, right like that. As a matter of fact, let me go back over here and move that line a little bit so that it doesn't run right over that plus sign. If you notice, I have a front now of the problem, that is in front of the line, and I have the back part or the last part of the problem that's behind that line. I will now take the GCF of the first two terms. The only thing they have in common is the A. So I will write down A, and I divide it out of both those, and that leaves B plus 3. Then, since there's a plus sign where that line is, I bring down a plus sign. If I look at the back part, 2B plus 6 has 2 in common. That's the GCF. So in this case, I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. So the 2 divided by 2 is 1B, 6 divided by 2 is 3. At this stage, whatever's in parentheses should match. And that is your common binomial. The common binomial will be whatever's in parentheses, and that should match. The second parentheses will always be these terms that were on the outside. So that would be A plus 2. Final answer then is B plus 3 and A plus 2. Let's try it again. Get a little more space on my paper. I will first draw the line down the middle. Do the GCF for the front. The GCF would be 4, because 4 is the largest number that divides 12 and 8, and X. So I'm going to divide out 4X. So I'm dividing by 4X on both of those. 12 divided by 4 is 3. X divided by X cancels, so that leaves a Y. Negative 8 divided by 4 is a negative 2, and the X cancels, so that's what I have. Now I'm going to bring down my subtraction sign. Now when I get to this one, it's strange. I do not have a GCF. The 3 and the 2 have no number divisible, and there's no common letter. When you have a problem like that, go ahead and put 1 is the GCF. So I basically just divide everything by 1. It's really going to be divided by negative 1, because you see how I brought down that subtraction sign. So let me go ahead and put that in there, since that was a subtraction in the middle. The first problem had addition in the middle, but this one has subtraction. So since that's subtraction, I will divide by negative 1, because there's nothing else they have in common. Well, negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3y, because it had a y. Positive 2 divided by negative 1 is negative 2. Now at this stage, whatever's in parentheses should match, and it does. So that is my common binomial that comes out in front. And whatever was outside parentheses now gets put inside the second one. So that will be 4x minus 1. Complete answer. Hope this helps you on greatest common factor and grouping methods of factoring.